Welcome back. Moving on now to our second big story. On assumption of duty, Inspector General of Police Ibrahim Idris expressed his zeal to rid the force of all forms of corruption by instituting strict measures to ensure that police officers carry out their duties and other responsibilities professionally in line with regulations guiding the force operations.
And in line with his drive, 14 officers who are believed to have compromised in the discharge of their duties have been sanctioned, while 9 of them were dismissed from the Nigeria Police Force. Now, the erring officers were found to have been involved in aiding and abetting serious crimes such as cattle rustling, robbery and kidnapping.
Conspiring with militants, disappearance of explosives, the sacked officers were arrested, subject to internally disciplinary measures and punished according to the gravity of their offences. We have joining us in the studio to look at this Nnamdi Okeke and also a security analyst, Okechukwu Nwanguma, who will be joining us hopefully in the course of this discussion this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
What do you make of this? The police in Nigeria already has an image problem where the generality of the public, just don't trust the police. And when you have this added into the mix, what does that make for?
Well, let me firstly say it's a bad one. Okay, it's a bad one because on the surface in Africa already, police has lost its legitimacy. However, it's a plus too to the police to fight crime internally. It's a very hard one to do, where you have your officers involved in a crime, you parade them, you have them dismissed. It's beautiful. It's a plus, as a matter of fact. Because for me, it also strengthens our belief in the police system. Also sends a message to anybody within the force that feels he's covered and he can perpetrate any of these crimes or aid it. I think it's a plus for me. Beyond just the usual backlashing on the police for failing grossly, I think this is a big plus for me. It also happened sometime in February, a DPO somewhere in Port Harcourt, after a write-up against him, he was picked up for kidnapping. That's beautiful.
And another 4 in
Yes, we hope to see more of that, actually. It actually shows that we're fighting this in the right direction, and it's from within. It sends a strong message that reaffirms our belief in the police.
Okay, let's bring in Okechukwu Nwanguma joining us from our Abuja studio here. Okay, good morning. It's good to have you on. Now, let me ask, first of all, having police officers involved in aiding and abetting conspiracy, kidnapping and all of that, what circumstance will make police officers be involved in crimes like that?
Well, first of all, you will agree that the police generally are ill-trained, ill-equipped, and ill-prepared to deal with crime. And unable to deal with crime, they then commit crime. And there have been several reports, including a report by NOPREN, where we, documented, cases of police involvement in crime, not just abetting crime, but also actual perpetration of crime. And the reason is that the basic duties of the police is to detect, prevent, and punish crime, but they lack the operational capability to deal with this. Unable to do that, they then resort to committing crime. And there have been documented incidences of police involving in all manner of crime, armed robbery, kidnapping, and all sorts of heinous crimes. So it's both a question of lack of capacity, lack of training, and then the fact that they are not well motivated. And most of the times you find that the excuse they give is that we are not well taken care of, we're not well paid, and so in order to augment for their poor pay, they resort to criminal activities.
Yes, indeed. We'll come to the issue of, the welfare of the police. But let me stay with you, Okechukwu. Now, the spike or the rise in kidnappings in the country, all across the country, from the north to the south, are we saying then that because of the collusion of, some criminal-minded policemen, that's why we have a preponderance of kidnapping in the country?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it is the duty of the police to apprehend people suspected of involvement, in kidnapping. But when they are not able to do that, and then we find situations where they are actually, involved, collaborating or conniving with kidnappers, then it creates an incentive for kidnappers to continue to commit the crime.
All right. Okechukwu, we'll come back to you. Let's.
And of course, we have.
All right. We'll come back to you, Okechukwu. Let me come to Nnamdi in here. Now, he talked about the issue of welfare, being ill-equipped, and all of that. There could be likelihood of having all of those in the police, but who do we hold responsible for this? Because at the time of recruitment, going into the police, you know what, based on the regimentations, based on the standard ethics, you know what is obtainable. Do we hold the police responsible for this, or the government that may or may not be putting enough funds into the police? But we know they have a budget.
For me now, to hold the police responsible, I'll give you a clear instance. We have about 370,000 policemen, for instance, in Nigeria. When 9 men have been dismissed or 14 found to aid and abet, what happens, or what's the role of the larger populace that's actually keeping the peace? Even amidst the lack of amenities, the lack of motivation. So for me, it's an individual thing, and it cuts across what you see everywhere in the world. I'll give you an example. The Oklahoma bombings in the US by a veteran who has even received an award at some point.
Yes.
Killing over 168 people. Does that mean he wasn't motivated, or he was not properly trained before his discharge? I'll take you back to 2010. Russell, a serving colonel in the Canadian Army, a serving colonel who killed 2 women and broke into 82 homes. He was found with even pants of children of 9 years old. A serving colonel pleaded guilty to about 88 crimes. A serving colonel. Does that mean the Canadian government was not doing its best? Or do we now label the Canadian military as having failed? It's the individual for me. If you have a policeman who has gone into crime, he has gone into crime because he's greedy. That's all.
So what you're saying then is it doesn't matter, or in spite of the level of, sophistication in putting systems in place to ensure that these things don't happen, there are still those who have the propensity and they will still carry it out. So what do you do then? I mean, to minimize the number of, especially now with these reports that we're getting now, as far as the Nigeria police is concerned, it's beginning to make some people worry that you might even have more than these numbers that we're seeing. The
truth is, this is even the right step in the right direction. Who would think at some point you have the police parade police officers for crime? It's beautiful. It's a fight from within. Of course, I had to check through our list of corrupt policies in the world. We don't fall among the first 10. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Surprising.
Yes, that's beautiful. So for me, it should be sustained. This is what we expect. We need to see more of this in the coming months, where from within we fish out those who aid these crimes. And you'll be surprised. If we consistently do this, we'll have a fantastic police force amidst the challenges. These challenges, what of countries where we don't have so much challenges with the whole of sophistication, and we have people who are motivated, but they still go into crime. Terrible crimes that you have a case where a man kills over 71 people outside the country. Not kidnap, kill, trained. He has been once under oath, a professional, maybe now a veteran. So what do we say about that? So in our case, I think we should employ the police because it's a plus for them. They need to do this consistently. A time will come, you send a message to anybody in the force. Look at the CBN case where you have 2 military men also paraded. Yes. Beautiful.
Okay, let's bring in Okechukwu in here. Okay, you have been working with the police for quite some time now, understanding how the system there works. Now, Nnamdi in the studio said that any police officer who goes into crimes like that could be or should be a product of greed from such kind of police, not necessarily the system. Although you give us a picture of how ill-equipped they can be sometimes, or how unmotivated they can be, as the case may be. But if we get into how they are even recruited in the first place, do you think at that level, at the instance of recruiting the police, that the tendencies, or those who have tendencies, could be fished out and then recruit only those who can really keep the peace and keep the ethics?
Police crime in Nigeria is institutional. It's institutional. It's not just about the individual disposition to commit crime. It's institutional. Institutional because you find there's a culture of...
Okay, Chuku, let me put you on hold a little. We'll come back to you after this break. Please stay with us. When we come back, you will answer that question. Stay with us on the program. All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are discussing the police in here. There has been allegations against the police force for being involved in kidnapping and other crimes, and that's what we're talking about in here right now. We have Nnamdi Okeke with us in the studio. He is a security expert, and we have Okechukwu Nwaguma with us in our Abuja studio. Okechukwu, before we went on break, I asked a question as to whether during the recruitment process that those who have the tendency to be involved in crimes like this can be fished out.
Yeah, I think I have made the point, once in that studio, that police recruitment in Nigeria is compromised by political interference and corruption, which enables misfits to find their way into the Nigerian police force. And I'm sure you know that a former president of this country, Obasanjo, did say that criminals have found their way into the Nigerian police. And the procedure of recruitment is so compromised that the necessary things that need to be done, the checks that need to be done before somebody is recruited are not done. It's simply a question of somebody paying a certain amount of money and the person gets recruited. So you find so many criminals, people who are misfits, people who cannot even read and write, find their way into the police. So the main motivation is they see the police as an avenue, to make money, extort money, and so you find a lot of criminals within the police. So that is the first problem. But the second level of the problem is that, crime is an institutional problem within Nigerian police, because there is a culture of cover-up. When police officers are involved in crime or human rights abuse, the tendency is to cover up rather than to investigate and prosecute such police officers. Of course, there are few occasions when officers have been disciplined, but of course there are key issues, key cases that need to... I can give you an example. In Enugu State, a former DPO, was alleged to be involved in the kidnapping of a 19-year-old, student of University of Nigeria, and the investigations pointed to, found a link between him and those who kidnapped that boy and killed him. A court in Enugu had issued an arrest warrant for this police officer, and the police said the man had, escaped. But of course, this happened in 2009. By 2012, the then IGP, had brought back, reabsorbed this same police officer who was a fugitive from justice, and made him a provost at Zone 9 Police Headquarters, Umuahia. And then the next year he was promoted promoted to Assistant Commissioner of Police, and is currently serving in Lagos State. This case has lingered, and this is a case of a senior police officer involved in kidnapping, and the court had issued a warrant to produce him in court. The police said he was nowhere to be found. Suddenly he was absorbed and posted. This is just one. This month, as we speak, you've heard about the case of 2 police officers who were arrested in Delta State for involvement in in kidnapping, and the CP in that state has been accused of releasing these officers. So, for me, I think that there's no question about whether police officers are involved in kidnapping and whether, crime is institutional, because the authorities are more inclined to shielding those accused of crime rather than bringing them to book.
Oh, wow, that's very worrisome revelations there coming from Nwanguma. What do you think about, what he's just said, the culture of crime and cover-up that is entrenched in the police? And he did talk about the independence of the police too, political interference on the part of the powers that be. But, speak to what he just raised now.
That's why I want to reaffirm. What we see now is something we should give a plus and should be sustained. Now, if this continues, what you have is, within the police force, if you are involved in any sort of crime, you become very cautious because the law won't spare you and the authority won't cover it up. Just as you can give instances.
So you believe it's a new day in the police?
Yes,
it's not going to be business as usual anymore. It's not going to be business as usual. The IG set out to fight corruption within the police because, of course, you need to police yourself before you start policing others. That's what I believe. So it starts from in-house. And if this is sustained, what you will see is a reinvested interest in the police and a police force that will be fighting a crime they are not involved in, which makes it a lot more easier. Which makes it a lot more easier. These stories date back to what had happened in the past, but they are actually things. In the Delta case, let's be clear on this one. Some of these things, we need to see what the investigation has actually done. These are allegations, and you release certain policemen. He has said they went for illegal duty. Whatever it is, let someone come out and say, this is wrong. Petition him just like they did to the DP, and it will be taken up. It's simple. It's not what we stay in the corners of our bedroom and just assert that this particular man has done something wrong.
Yeah, but he mentioned the case in Enugu State, that a court even issued out a warrant. As the case may be. And he was reabsorbed into the system and reposted, even promoted, and all of that.
And
now,
still within the police.
And still within the police. Now, if we take this into perspective, does it look like there's some semblance of selective prosecution here, where some persons can be prosecuted and others can go scot-free, even though there could be allegations against them, or there are even court pronouncements against them?
Well, the first thing is, we actually will take a leap from where we are. I don't expect that these changes will come overnight. But gradually, we will see a development where either way, if you are involved in any crime and people write that you're involved in a crime, you will be checked and you will be persecuted by the police, even if you're a policeman. That's what we are seeing. And we just hope that this is actually sustained. Now, it's not in my place now to say it's selective. And the reason why is because you can't actually prove it. Sometimes you investigate a case, everybody who hates this particular crime will tell you these guys are involved. But after your investigations, you find out that they were just doing an illegal job somewhere, and for God's sakes, what they've done can be handled summarily within the police. Of course, there will be that far cry that no, this has been covered up. But to what extent can we prove this without investigation? And the guys who are saddled with this responsibility is also the police. So.
Okay, Nwanguma, you did talk about the independence of the police. That's what I get from what you said about political interference. So how can we achieve that? And then you have a situation where the police is highly centralized. The supervision or oversight, comes from the federal and state levels. How can we, change this to ensure that you get the best of police officers when they are recruited?
Well, talking about centralization, yeah, it is clear that the Nigerian police is highly centralized, and 3 successive presidential committees on police reform have recommended that they need to decentralize the Nigerian police and devolve authority and resources. The reason you find because you see, resources are concentrated at the center. They don't trickle down. They don't trickle down, and that is why you find divisional officers having to look for other means to raise money for their operations. If you don't want police officers to mount illegal roadblocks in order to make money to run their operations, then there's need to ensure that resources trickle down to them. If I don't know, you'll be shocked to hear how much a division receives in a month. That is when they do receive. So that has been, clearly, understood that there's need to decentralize and devolve police authority and resources so that local authorities can take initiative and can have resources to run their operations. In terms of independence, the problem lies it lies with the legal framework of the Nigerian police. Both the Constitution and the Police Act centralize both policy and operational control of the police in the hands of the president. There's need to amend the sections of the Constitution and the Police Act which said that the president is operational head. The operational head of the police ought to be the Inspector General of Inspector General of Police, and not the president, who is a politician and a member of a political party. So when you do that, when you restore operational control to the Inspector General of Police, guarantee his tenure, security of tenure, and operational autonomy to help to enhance police operations and effectiveness. So those are the my answers to those two questions. But I needed to also respond to something my colleague there said about parading police officers, and this has been clearly pointed out that parading people accused or suspected of crime before the media is prejudicial to fair trial. It is illegal. And the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Executions did say during his visit to Nigeria that police parade suspects just to demonstrate to demonstrate their effectiveness at fighting crime. Because most of the times you find that parading people amounts to trying them in the media when they have not had the chance to appear in court to defend themselves. So we should not encourage police parading people who are only suspects and should be presumed innocent until they have been found guilty by a competent court of law.
All right, okay, Chukwu, thank you. We'll come back to you shortly on this. Let's go on a break and we go on the discussion now. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We're looking at police involvement in kidnapping and other crimes. Our guest in the studio is Nnamdi Okeke, who's a security expert, and in Abuja studio is Okechukwu Nwanguma, a security analyst, looking at this for us. Now, going further, Nnamdi, the issue of appropriate punishment for a policeman who is involved in something as grievous as kidnapping and of course armed robbery and all of that. One of the legislators actually recommends a death sentence or death penalty.
I agree completely. The whole idea of death penalty came up in many other states because it was clear that the punishment for kidnap encouraged it. So I think that's the ultimate punishment, although it's not a universal agreed punishment. If you go by what is within the context of the punishment within the police cap, you won't find a death penalty. You serve a long-term sentence like life if should you kill the person you have kidnapped. But a death penalty will just solve it for us. I think I'm completely for the death penalty.
But in a situation where the world is kicking against the death penalty, and we're talking about modern life and all of that, how desirable is to keep that death penalty that is still on, or even to recommend in the first place?
The truth is, here in Africa, there's a message we understand. You know that there's a chance that you're going to lose your life or serve for life should you even adopt someone for 50 naira. It will work as a deterrent, and that will really solve it for us now. The countries we're trying to look at, the people who are telling us that this is not working, they are 100 years ahead of us.
if not more.
If not more, you know. So I'm looking at what works for Africa. You know, I'm going to kidnap this child for 200,000 naira. That's an act of greed. The penalty if I'm caught is death. I'm most likely to rethink that situation. And of course, you'll see that happening. Although that will also change another trend. There will be more deaths now on the base of kidnapping because you know that if you are caught, the penalty is death. Of course, even the question of having policemen involved in this crime hits a particular assumption. The assumption is unemployment is one of the reasons why people actually go into kidnapping. I mean, these are employed guys, employed, and they are working. If you even find out a list of persons who have been involved in kidnapping, they have small skills, small trade, they do something, they have some money, but they still go and do crime.
Wanguma, would you recommend the death penalty for a police officer who is found, you know, guilty of committing a crime of kidnapping?
Under the international human rights standard, and Nigeria is part of the the international community, there is a movement away from death penalty, and the reason is that research has shown that death penalty is no deterrence to crime. It doesn't deter crime. Killing, when the state kills somebody, even for killing, it is seen more as vengeance, rather than punishment. So death penalty is no answer to any crime. Crimes have socio-economic roots, so we need to address the socio-economic root cause of crime rather than responding by descending to the level of the criminal. Death penalty is no option at all. It doesn't deter crime. It's barbaric, really.
All right. If you talk about deterrent, where we find ourselves right now, crime to some extent seem to be increasing. Although it is arguable because when we get reports from the police themselves, they say crime is going down because they're on top of the game. They're on top of the game. But what option would you recommend that would be able to deter people from being involved in crimes like kidnapping, for instance?
The laws have adequate provision for dealing with crime. If you take a police officer, for instance, a police officer who is involved in kidnapping, once it is verified that this officer is involved in kidnapping, the first thing to do is to dismiss that officer and then charge that officer under the appropriate law. There are laws for crimes, for every crime, including kidnapping, and there are prescribed penalties. There's no evidence that the penalties are not sufficient. I think what has happened is that we have not actually applied these laws. For instance, I have made reference to Sam Chuku, an ACP of police, who was a DPO in Enugu, whom the police authorities are aware that the courts have issued a warrant for his arrest. Rather than arrest him and produce him in court to face charges, they have, they redeploy him and promoted him. So what message are they sending across? So it is not about death penalty. It's about enforcing the laws, and ensuring that everybody who commits crime is subjected to appropriate, and then also to address the root cause of crime. Why are people committing crime? I don't think anybody will. For instance, we heard about the case of a child who was mobbed because the child stole Gary. I mean, was the answer to kill that child?
Yeah,
it doesn't stop crime. It's to apply the law as it is. If we think the law is not adequate, we amend the law, but not to prescribe death penalty.
Well, on the issue of the young chap who was allegedly killed, mobbed and killed for stealing Gary. Well, we've been told by the police that this person was actually not a child, as a matter of fact, a full adult. But even at that, is it enough, to kill a person for stealing food? Even the scriptures actually say that if a person steals to eat food, they should not be, punished. But that's, by the way, let's look at the root cause which Wanguma referred to, the issue of welfare. Looking at the police, in all fairness, are we doing enough? Government, the top hierarchy, are they doing enough to ensure that these officers have all it takes to perform their duties, and so will not, you know, have this tendency to want to resort to crimes?
Basically, for crime, we'll look at it holistically. There are many root causes. For me, I'll narrow it down to two. First, the level of poverty, the inequality level of poverty. I mean, almost all crimes gets its roots from poverty. However, for the case of a man who is already working, and we have over 370,000 of this type of men facing the same situation, and a few, 14 out of them, 19, even 50 or 100 out of them go into crime on the basis of lack of provision, I completely disagree. In fact, if you go further, it's a decadence in the society. You see a man who works and is paid 25,000 naira and he's using a jeep. He lives in a luxurious house. We celebrate him. So here comes the crime we're talking about. Nobody cares where he has made his money, but we are impressed that he's successful in African standard. Now, this is where we encourage it. This is where it actually happens. So for me, beyond provision for the police, making sure that things are provided for them, let's just oppose it with the bigger number of people who are actually living under the same conditions and trying hard to be professionals. And so for me, it's poverty, generalized, and also greed. Some level of decadence. You see someone, you know that this guy should be questioned, and you just feel, let's leave him, he's successful, but you know what he ends. How come he's so successful?
Okay, well, that's a big question, I must say. Okay, Chukwu, let me come to you on this. Now, sometimes the performance of the police seem to be linked or dependent on the body language of the Inspector General of Police at the time. We have seen all of this play out. And we also know that there has been police reforms in the past. What impact has those reforms had on the police to sustain such kind of reforms in order not for the police to act based on the body language of the IGP?
Well, the truth is that when any Inspector General of Police comes on board and makes it clear that the police under his authority will not tolerate crime, definitely it will send a clear message to the police officers that they cannot just engage in crime with reckless abandon. But of course, it doesn't completely stop. What it does actually is to make them become more careful. They find other ways of committing this crime without being caught. So at the end of the day, it is not the body language that will address crime. It will definitely put them on notice. They will be a little bit more cautious. But unless you address those basic challenges that predispose them to committing crime, for instance, police torture because they don't have the know-how of basic investigation. They know no other way of investigating other than torture. So the solution is to train them on forensics, and you see that it will reduce torture. When you don't pay the police well, or even when you don't pay them well, you don't pay them on time. They have families and they have needs that they need to attend to. Under pressure, you find them using their uniform and their gun to make money for themselves. So that is the problem. It is to address the welfare deficit in the Nigerian police, pay them well, promote them when they are due, and then apply the law in a very just manner, ensure that whoever commits crime is brought to justice. It's not a question of body language, Sometimes police officers even become defiant.
Okay,
Indeed.
all right, okay, Chukwu, thank you, okay, Chukwu, thank you very much.
Well, Nnamdi, have the last say here. I know you don't agree that welfare or non-welfare, it's enough justification
cost. Yes.
and all of that. But when you look at 45,000, for example, for them to run their operations every quarter, isn't that really, I mean,
To
crazy,
be honest, to make
for
a,
lack
to
of
ma-
a
to make
better
a
word.
fine police officer a professional, what we really need to do, and I think that's lacking, is training. It's training. I tell you something. If you look at fine police teams around the world, what makes them that thick and good and stay ethical is the quality of training. What we do is we recruit, you get into the system, you talk about your promotion, your salaries. Check the man. What's the quality of his content? It's nothing.
Okay, we'll have to live
All
it
right,
there.
Namdi Okeke, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
on the
Thank you so
program
much.
today. Thank you. We thank Okechukwu Mwaguma for joining us from Abuja. This is where we round off on the program today. Tomorrow will be another day again for us to discuss other issues that concern us and concern Nigeria. I must say, have a great day ahead. I am Mike Okwoche.
And I am Ngozi Alebu wishing you the same. Have a beautiful day ahead.